Yeah. Yeah, I think that for me, that entrepreneurial tax came in the form of litigation, right? That's what I would say is an expensive lesson learned.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is
Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Aaron Moore, the founder and president of PPD Painting, a company celebrated for its excellence and rapid growth in the commercial painting industry. PPD has been named in the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list 6 times, received Inc.'s Higher Power Award, and earned 5 APC Magazine Top Job Awards, showcasing a steadfast commitment to quality and innovation. Beyond his company, Aaron is a co-founder of the Commercial Painting Industry Association, fostering global connections among industry leaders through events and peer groups. He's also a frequent contributor to industry publications, including Inc. Magazine, American Paint Contractor, In Paint, Commercial Painting Magazine, and Coatings Pro. And additionally, Aaron is the co-host of the Commercial Painting Podcast, where he shares insights and experiences from his career. Aaron's passion for service extends to his community. As president of the Samuel Bell Memorial Foundation, he raises funds for underprivileged youth and advocates for bicycle safety, a mission inspired by a loss of a dear friend in a cycling accident. And with all that said, Aaron, welcome to the show.
Full bio. Thanks, Justin. Glad to be here.
Don't mess around. When I went through all of it, I was like, "Wow, this is all great. What am I going to cut out of this? This is all good stuff." So I said these fun things, but tell us, how did you get in the industry? How did this all start? This crazy idea of entrepreneurship in commercial painting?
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about it a little bit last night before we had the call, and I mean, I really think that you're kind of people like this are born this way, right? Like who would want to take on all that stuff? You just have to kind of be born with that sort of compulsion to do these things. So, how it started for me, I wanted to back up a little bit because we talked about it yesterday. I went right into painting, and I was thinking, when I was a kid, my parents would always say, "This is our son, Aaron. He's going to be a politician or a preacher." And I think like an entrepreneur is not too far from that, right? You're always trying to influence people and make friends and smiling, and that's kind of how it works: shaking hands, kissing babies. So, that was kind of my background. And when people would ask me what I want to be when I grew up, I said a millionaire by 30. That was as a kid. So I didn't really there wasn't really an affinity for I didn't want to be a fireman, or I didn't want to be a painter. I wanted to be a businessman. It's that's where it all started. And I fell into the painting industry after I got out of college. I have a degree in finance, and a buddy of mine had a painting company and said, hey, I'll give you half of this thing to come be my partner. And, away went the entrepreneurial journey. If I knew what I know now, I probably would have hoped to as an electrician instead of a painter. I think it's more lucrative, but this is where I wound up. And so I'm making the most of it.
Well, as an entrepreneur, you can always start an electrical company, just so you know.
I need another business. Like I need another all in my head.
Yeah, you're not doing enough based on what I said. You need to add another business.
Company. And it is missing one thing. I also own a campground out in Montana that I run too.
Well, but of course, there's always a side hustle, that's happening. We don't necessarily talk about. Yeah. So explain this crazy idea, the entrepreneurial way. When we talked initially, you said, "I'm unemployable in corporate America." You said that directly, which I love. So what does that mean? Like, what does that mean as our listeners think about them being entrepreneurs, and what does that look like for you?
When I think about corporate America, I think about celebrating mediocrity. That's what I would say is like if you don't make any waves, if you don't cause any problems, if you just do your job, be quiet, show up on time, leave maybe a half hour after on time, you get rewarded in corporate America. And I don't think that the entrepreneur sees things like that. We see things a little bit outside the box, and like, how can we break all the rules, tear this thing down, and make double when we walk away from it in a week, So that's not exactly celebrated. And after a couple of corporate stints not working out, I think I realized that, and I was a proven performer, so I couldn't quite understand, how could you let go the highest performing guy on the team? And it was because you make too much noise performing, and that's just not for me. So that's when I kind of realized I'm probably not the most employable guy, just because I'm not going to follow the rules, and I'm just going to do what it takes to get the job done and do it at the highest level possible. So I look for the situations where those rewards, and when you're an entrepreneur, if you crush it, you reap the rewards. That's how it works.
All that noise is probably from the idea that you were going to be a preacher or politician. So they're generally, a lot of noise comes from them too.
So, you must have learned something. I mean, okay, first off, finance to something in the construction world, that's not always a leap that you hear, right? Talking about numbers and then painting company. So there had to be some sort of draw there. And on top of it, not everything can be bad. Was there anything that you drew from to help grow the company?
Yeah, so I think one of the really things from corporate America and the corporate jobs that I had that I drew was, the professionalized training, right? So when you look at sales systems or how to sell, they have a definitive system of here's our professional sales system, or here's our Sandler training, or here's, so, and I don't think that you have to, I don't believe that those all have to be followed in a singular manner, but you pull pieces from each of those, and over time you develop your sales kind of swagger and how that works. So I would say that that gave me certainly a great foundation for how am I going to look at sales in a more analytical manner than just I'm going out and selling and making friends, because there's a lot of people that are really good at making friends, but really bad at closing sales. So I think that, for me, it really gave me the framework to close deals, not just get in front of deals, but to close deals. And so I think that was helpful in the corporate America side.
So how does that translate to, you've got a team, I believe, salespeople at this point. How does that translate then to your sales team? What learning lessons have you kind of learned between your experience as well as making your own way?
Well, I think that is one of the things that's the biggest challenge with scale, right? Is, and I think I mentioned to you when we were doing prior to this that, we've kind of built this team of unicorns. We have all great people. We have great salespeople, but it's probably not the most scalable model, because at some point we have to look and break down, what are the skills that make these people unicorns? And then how do we find those people in a repeatable manner? And so that's kind of where we are in our company today, is really looking at and breaking down and building out that sales playbook, which, I wish I could tell you this is the result of it, but, we're entrepreneurs and we're moving through day as we go. So the truth of the matter is I'm midway through that process. And so hopefully you have me back in a year or two and I can report back good news about it. But I think that identifying that is probably a blind spot in our organization over time, to be able to say, okay, we're going to address this issue if we're going to scale this business, was probably that foundation was laid by working for the big companies that understand they have scaled their businesses, and they do that, and they bring everybody in. And the first day you're sitting in a sales training, you're not going out and selling. It doesn't matter if you're selling, web ads, or if you're selling, high dollar ticket items. You still have this basis that you start from in corporate America, and we need to do that as an organization internally for PPD.
So you said, that it's hard to scale unicorns, but wouldn't unicorns be rock stars? So aren't they able to sell a lot within an organization? So is the problem that there isn't enough unicorns out there? Or talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I would say that the thing is that the unicorn isn't, in this scenario, or how I'm referring to it, they don't all have a singular skill set, right? So you go, all right, Will has this skill set that makes him kill it at sales here. Justin has these awesome relationships with this other world that makes him kill it right here. And that, and so on and so forth. So you don't have okay, we're all kind of have this unified USP that we're going out to the marketplace with, and we're going after this set customer, this blue chip, or this, ideal customer profile and with a united front. And that's what I mean by like the unicorns is we're kind of a little fragmented and, maybe you kill it in one area and they kill it in another area, but are those the areas that we even want to be focused on? And I think we have to start there.
Totally to the point of just because you can sell a thing doesn't necessarily mean that's the thing we should be selling right now, right? Like, hey, if you don't have an office in, I don't know, Alaska, for instance, and you say, hey, we're not going to do Alaska deals right now because it doesn't matter that you found one, or maybe it does, right? Depending on the size of it and all those different things. But as an example of there are things just because you can sell an idea to somebody that's willing to give you money doesn't always mean that you should do it right now if there's no other processes in place or delivering the outcome that, there's a certain quality that you're trying to deliver. And if it's in a remote area that you're I don't know, I have no idea how the hell we're going to do this, it becomes well, that wasn't the best deal to sell then.
But Justin, I like selling ice to Eskimos.
Yeah, seriously.
So Aaron, these different skill sets, you're kind of putting this process together. Outside of identifying unicorns, what have been sort of the major points or to get to the point of this is now scalable? What would you describe then? I am now able to scale, and it's okay that you're in the process. I think you've been around the block.
Yeah. I mean, I have a pretty straightforward answer for that. I mean, it was kind of an accidental thing, as with most things, is trial and error. So we got a customer of ours went to Cincinnati. We were a Chicago-based company. They went to Cincinnati and said, hey, we're buying a portfolio of buildings. Are you interested in looking at it? So I went down, I looked at it. It was a good job. And he said, okay, well, this was at fall at the time. And he said, well, it's not going to happen until spring. It was an exterior paint job, so we couldn't do it in the winter. And he's like, so if you want it, it's yours. We have the price. It's approved. We can use a local contractor down there, but we really trust you. So we like the work that you do. So what we did is I turned on my marketing machine starting in October that year and said, if we can drum up leads, and I went back and forth every other week myself, just trying to sell work or send an estimator down and just try to kind of feel out the market. And we found that, hey, we have something here. We were able to walk into that market with $750,000 in work backlog start for the summer. And then we just went for it. And I think that we definitely had some hiccups along the way and staffing challenges and who do we put there? And, we had some turnover and there was some challenges to it. And then all of a sudden it clicked. We got the right person. We got the right stuff. We got the right staff in place. And it was 2 years in and all of a sudden it was boom, that worked. And we're okay, now we can replicate. I think we could do that again. Once you forget, we have very short memories, right? So you forget about the 2 years of pain. When you get that one day that it all works right, it's kind of like golf. You pretty much suck, but you make that one good shot and you're I like golf. But then you hack the next 3 into the woods and then it lets you have one good shot into the green and you're I'm pretty good at this game. I could be good at this, so we forget about that stuff. And I think that that's kind of how that piece went. And so we try to put some parameters around it and we've opened a couple offices since and we've learned some stuff there. And when those go right, it'll probably be the same memory curve. It'll be oh, that was easy. And you forget about the 2 years of shit you went through.
What was the strategy to open the other offices? Obviously, the Cincinnati one, you had a client that said, hey, I got a bunch of work for you to do. That seems like the best scenario. But what about some of the other offices?
Yeah, so really, I think Montana was because I moved out here, right? So I live in Montana full time. I travel back and forth to Chicago and Cincy for work. And so after 6 years of being here and meeting the people and not doing any business and people knowing who I was, it was kind of well, I have this network here. Why would I not utilize it? Now, I would say that I broke kind of a cardinal rule, right? It doesn't fit our market. It doesn't fit who we are. It's not really the market that we are used to serving. So it's been a challenge, right? Because I think now we're looking at it as, okay, we want a market that's no more than 2 hours from our furthest office, right? So, when Indy, Columbus, those fit in that parameter, right? They're close to Chicago, they're close to Cincinnati. They have representative populations similar to Cincinnati where we had success, where we moved out here and there's a population of 100,000 total people. We have tourism, but it's a totally different market. So I think one of the lessons learned there. Now, while we're not abandoning Montana and we're having a lot of success here, but I think a part of that is that I actually live here and I'm kind of the driving force behind it. And But looking at, okay, what are the things that made it successful? I think that those tier 2 markets, I think we'd struggle in one of the tier 1. Like Chicago is a very difficult market if you're not from there. You don't see a lot of out-of-state painting companies opening in Chicago. You see a ton of out-of-state painting companies opening in Nashville, right? So like a tier 2 market with a little less saturation and a little less competition can really make a big difference when you come in with the backbone of a larger company. So I think mapping that out and looking at what is our actual target, do those clients exist there? How many square foot of industrial real estate is there in that city? Does it make sense? What's the hot population? Then we can look at the market and say, this makes sense. And then is it accessible from one of our other offices? So if something goes wrong, we can bail it out quickly. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in this kind of scale and expansion.
Quick, you mentioned tier 1, tier 2 market. How do you define that? And is there a tier 3?
There are certainly there's many tiers, right? I mean, I just look at tier 1, I think is, cities over a few million people, right? So, your New York, your Dallas, your Atlanta, your Chicago, your LA, your Seattle, those are kind of what I would consider tier 1. I also think that many of the tier 1 cities have a strong union component in the trades. That makes a difference for scale and makes a difference for entering a market. Our tier 2 markets are going to be metros in the million-ish range, right? So for us. Now, I'm not saying that this isn't, like, you can't Google that and find. That's just what I'm referring to when I refer to them.
Makes sense. You also mentioned a marketing machine when you're popping up Cincinnati. What does that mean? Everybody wants a marketing machine. And if you can just call on it whenever you need it, that sounds very, very scalable.
Easier said than done. But
of course.
It's not a magic machine, but it's sourcing and utilizing email marketing to get to our target clients. So looking at who's we're a repaint contractor primarily. So we look for opportunities in repaint and maintenance. So who are our clients? Our clients are, owners of real estate portfolios, multifamily property managers, facility managers. Those are kind of like the titles that we're looking for. So we start to go through like a platform like Zoom Info, extract data, start emailing. So those emailing sequences are pretty successful for us. And so that's one of the things that we turn on early. And then getting a small physical location where we have an address and we can put together a Google map pack and doing those things that give us a local presence, and then building a landing page onto our site to say we're working here now, doing an announcement to our client base via our email newsletter. So it's kind of a multifaceted approach to like letting people know. And then, even though the client may be a Chicago client that gets, hey, we opened in Indy, many of those clients, Prologis has buildings all over the world. Now you're doing Indy. Let me introduce you to somebody. With our bank accounts, Fifth Third, or some of those types of accounts where you would have Bank of America, they have dispersed footprints. So now you can pick up another region. So those are kind of the things that I mean with our marketing. I would call it a machine, but I wouldn't say that it's like, it's just an automated approach. It's kind of a multifaceted in different divisions.
No, that makes sense. And what do you have a process like, hey, in the first 90 days, 100 days of opening an office that you have a game plan now that you've done it a couple times?
Yeah, so that's a good question because I just finished it. You guys are on the podcast, but this is what I'm working on. So it's on my desk right here. So we did put together like a 90-day playbook where we outlined, here's what we want the first hire in that market to do to be successful. And it comes along with some KPIs, some indicators for us to see like, okay, are you making the calls? Are you doing the messaging? Are you having the touches? Are you reaching out to new clients? And then it also shows like, what are the goals of that? So is it to get 10 estimates this week? Is it to get 2 estimates this week? Is it to close one deal? So, an example on that, I can, because I have it right here, I can tell you, it's about list building, but we have it week by week. So here's week 4, keep making 20 qualified calls per day, continue handwritten notes, follow up with potential customers from week 3, focus on closing deals, aiming to reach a total of 5 by the end of the month, review your progress and identify areas for improvement. So like that would be his week 4 or her week 4. So like building that out, and then it's very defined. So they can just check kind of, okay, I've done this week. And then when we have feedback calls, it takes some of the onus off of me or a trainer because I'm only one person with a limited amount of time. So I can't be, if you want to have, 3 people going through this process. I don't have the time to hold their hand every single day. So this allows them to work autonomously. Like, I think one of the guys, I don't know, you guys might know Nick from Nick's Pizza, but he kind of coined the term, what did he say? Trust and track versus command and control, right? So like, if we can give them the program and trust them to follow it, and then just track, are they doing the things that are listed in the program? Then there's really it takes the emotion out of it. It takes all of it. And it just makes life easy. So that's really our goal.
I love how you talked. So trust and track versus command and control. Part of really what's being talked about there is accountability, holding someone accountable, which is arguably one of the hardest things to do with people in a business, is to understand that aspect, right? The employee is going, okay, what do I need to do? And if there's a misalignment in expectations, or if there's a misalignment between what the company is and what the employee thinks, then usually there's a failure somewhere, right? So, and you're just one person. So how do you make sure what has been, tried, proven way around holding someone accountable versus where you've had to learn from those mistakes?
The answer to that is actually very simple. It's really about the set expectations, right? So like, if you don't define the expectations and you don't have the things that are clear to track, then it makes that you can trust them. But if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, like you said, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, if you lay it out so that a child could understand it, then there's really it's not hard to track. And if you can put a KPI around it, like make 20 calls a day, I can say, Justin, how many calls did you make today? And you're like, I'm not sure. Okay, well, that isn't the answer that we're looking for.
That's not 20.
So tomorrow you're going to write down and you're going to report back to me who you called. Like, I trusted you to make the calls. I asked you to make the calls. You didn't have the answer. Now we're going to add another layer. You're going to build a spreadsheet, and every time you make a call, you're going to put it in there, and I'm going to check it. Because I trusted you at first, and now you didn't do the work. So now we have to put in another layer. And so I think that that's an easy way to keep it from falling off. And like, now Justin shouldn't be mad at me. We had an agreement. You were going to make 20 calls. Did you or didn't you? I don't think there's any reason, it's not a personal attack. I could still like you, Justin. I'm just upset because you're not following the protocol and you're not having success. And the other side of that coin is, if I call Justin, I say, did you make 20 calls? He goes, no, but I closed a $2 million deal. I don't care how many calls Justin made.
That's right.
Sales cures all.
Results talks.
Sales cures all ails. Okay. So I like to use the term entrepreneurial tax, and you kind of talked about it earlier, but I want to, what other places, when we talk about the entrepreneurial tax, that you have to learn from a scaling perspective? And if you remember from our conversation before, there was one topic I wanted to go over.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that for me, that entrepreneurial tax came in the form of litigation, right? That's what I would say is an expensive lesson learned. You can be right and still lose, I think, is one of the things. And that's one of the things that I learned the hard way, is that, like, no one cares if you're right. There's some deals, some fights you can win, some fights you can't. And I learned that even with clients, and I try to tell my guys, you'll get guys that are like, the clients may be in the wrong, but you can prove that you're right, but then they can never give you business again. So did you win? I don't know if you actually won. And the same thing goes for litigation and attorneys and those sort of things. Is, I had a situation where, we don't feel that we were right. We were set up on a job where they had no intention to pay, and it was a lot of money. And, when it came time to pay, we had a conversation during the job where I was suspicious of this individual. They seemed to be acting in a very suspicious manner. I had a gut feeling about it. And I had a conversation looking them in the eye saying, like, are you going to pay me for this work, or is this a setup? And they looked me in the eye and said, I'm not. So it was a personal vendetta almost at that point. And I still ended up writing the check. Like, I paid the attorneys, I had to pay them off. And it wasn't because we weren't right. It was just because it didn't matter. It was big, bad corporation against little mom and pop, poor as me. And that wasn't the case, but that's how it was portrayed. And in a court that was very not friendly to business. So, and a judge that was unprepared. So it cost a lot of money. It cost a lot of time. And I still wrote the check. And I look back on that and think, one of my mentors said to me, big boys write big checks sometimes, Aaron. And that, always resonated to me to think like, sometimes even though you're right, the opportunity cost of your emotional and just like that type of stuff can just suck the life out of you. And if you put that much energy into something productive, right, I would have made 10x the money I needed to write that check if I never put my energy into that and put it into something that could have gone to making more money. So I'd say, like, when we talk about entrepreneurial tax, that's what comes to mind with me, is those sorts of decisions that you just have to learn over time and remove emotion sometimes from some of these decisions.
Very much a ego component there, right? Of like, I'm right, and it's the principle of the matter, and that's going to then cost me more than I would like in the long run.
Yeah, exactly.
So how does someone decide where to draw the line between right and, we'll call it the entrepreneurial tax and just letting it go? Because there's an emotional component, and you're saying try not to be emotional. I get it.
Well, I think you have to look further down the road. To me, you look further down the road. Like, what is this? How does this decision affect me down the road, right? So, like, you cannot not pay us and not get sued. We will sue you, even though it doesn't make sense sometimes, because we can't set a precedent so you don't have to pay us. So, like, when I look at that, I go, all right, yeah, does it make sense in this particular case that for $10,000, we're going to spend $5,000 suing this person? That doesn't make sense. But when I look at what would happen if I had a reputation of, you don't have to pay him, that would probably hurt my business all the way down the road. So that's a scenario where you look at it and you go, okay, maybe that does make sense, because we can't allow this to be who we're going to be for the future. So I think sometimes those decisions can be made. If this is a one-off, cut your losses, move on, it's not going to affect your business moving forward, then it probably isn't worth it. But if it's going to be something that, like, a decision today is going to affect you for the next 20 years, well, then you have to think about, is it really about this decision, or is it about the bigger picture? And when you look at something like, paying your bills, accounts receivable, that's something about the whole picture, not just about this one isolated incident.
Can you talk about, because you mentioned something, opportunity costs, right? So what are those opportunity costs, right? And going through the process, for someone that's never gone through the process, or maybe debating going through this process, they think that they've thought it through. What are some of the opportunity costs that are not necessarily written down?
Well, I mean, in general, obviously, I think you understand opportunity costs, like what I'm doing right now versus what I could be potentially doing, right? So, those opportunity costs, it depends on, sometimes it can be time. I find that the one that is biggest for me is just mental capacity, right? Like, how much, we have a certain number of thoughts per day, whatever, 10,000 thoughts can go through your head. So how much of if we say, I don't know the exact number, Tom Walter can tell you, but if you have a certain number of thoughts that go through your head every single day, so if you're going to take, say the number's 10,000, and 3,500 of these thoughts are going to be consumed by this negative thing, the opportunity cost is, like, you could be putting those 3,500, 30% of your thoughts could be going to, how do I make more money? How do I make this business better? How do I do better? How do I spend better time with my wife and kids? And, like, all the positive things that you can have in life. Or you can waste a third of those thoughts down this rabbit hole. And what would be the outcome if I focus those thoughts on these more positive things? That's where I think it really changes the game. And that's what you have to contemplate when you're going, all right, am I going to go down this, or am I not going to go down this? Because if it takes away from those things, you can't get those thoughts back. You can't get that time back. You've lost that time in those thoughts. And that's why I refer to it as kind of an opportunity cost.
Putting it, it's not just time. It's the energy. It's the decision fatigue is what I like to call it.
For sure.
Too many things, too many paths.
That actually brings up, obviously tons of decisions happen in a business every day. You think strategically over time. How do you identify the most important things? Like, what's the process of saying, like, I can only do so much stuff, I need to do this over this?
That's a hard question to answer, because a lot of times I find myself doing stuff I probably should have done something else, right? So, like, I try to look at the things that I have on my to-do list and take the crappiest one and do it first.
All right.
Like, if I can get that out of the way, the hardest thing I have to do all day, if I can do that at 8:30 in the morning, then I feel like my day gets easier from there. So if I have a hard phone call to make, or I have something that I really am not looking forward to doing, I just try to do that. And I think that's one of the things where, I don't know if you guys have gotten into like the cold plunge stuff, but that's one of the things, like, I go to the gym, I go home, I sauna, I cold plunge, and then I go to the office. So like, I do not like the cold plunge. I do not want to do it. Like, I look at that thing and I think about like Goggins talking to his running shoes. Like, I don't want to do it. But I'm like, I have to just do this because this is how I'm going to get my brain. And I don't know about the inflammation and losing weight. It hasn't really worked for me, but I can tell you the brain piece of like doing the thing that you really despise doing leaves me in a good mental place to head to the office. So that's one thing I would say. And then just trying to prioritize your tasks. I use an AI type calendar that sets up to-do dates, and I prioritize high, medium, low, and then it puts the stuff in front of me that I've marked as high in slots that I have time to do it in. And I try to organize myself that way. Sometimes I get it done good and sometimes not so good.
No, but you're at least thinking about the concept. Well, medium, high, medium, low, like there's certain things that are more valuable to do. Obviously getting out the thing that you hate to do or the biggest pain in the ass in the morning has advantages throughout the rest of the day. So that makes sense.
Something that we talked about before, I think this is a good place to talk about it, is all these learning lessons that you've had. You've been an EO and you've also looked at other organizations, Vistage, YPO, etc. So you decided to go your own path and create your own association. Why did you go down that path? And, what's the difference in comparison to things like EO, Entrepreneurs Organization?
Yeah, thanks, Will. Thanks for that question, because I like to share what I'm up to with the association. So we started the Commercial Painting Industry Association just to kind of bridge the gap. So in our industry, we had a couple trade associations, and I was heavily involved with. I came up as kind of a pot and brush, owner operator painting company. That's how I built this. I started it with a paintbrush and a buddy. So and it was very instrumental in my development. And I got to a certain point where I ran out. Like, I felt like I was just giving, and there was no one there for me to get from. And then we looked at. There's another association in our industry that caters to industrial contractors that paint like bridges, water towers, tanks. And, we saw this hole in the middle of resources for commercial painting contractors. And when I talk about commercial painting contractors, I talk about, architectural applications. So you're thinking like wall paint, ceiling paint, trim paint, interior, exterior, not like industrial applications, to non-single family residents. So that could be offices, churches, retail centers, whatever. That's my definition of commercial painting, just so that we're on the same page. And I had utilized my experience with EO and the forum experience, and I had been in some other masterminds or peer groups. They have a lot of terms that they use for it. But I had been in some of those, and I thought, while EO is amazing and it gives you access to like tons of blind spot coverage and feedback because you have all these entrepreneurs, you have to be a founder to be part of it. So everyone has kind of the same, at some point had that same seizure, like, I'm going to go do this by myself. And you have this conversation, but I might have a guy that's selling a tech platform. I'm a painting contractor. I got a tech guy, I've got an IT guy, I've got a marketing guy, and I got a guy that sells wrenches, or a manufacturing guy. And so there is, I think all business kind of topics do boil down to, they cross over. They very cross over between the industry. But utilizing that same model in an industry specific has its advantages too, because we can compare things like financials, right? Like, where's your gross profit as a percentage of your revenue, right? So we can look at that, and we're in the same industry. We should all be kind of close there. So we can find, and so there's some stuff that we can uncover. So that was kind of the model behind it. And we're up to 10 peer groups. We have members from Australia, Germany, UK, US, Canada. So, it's really been a fun thing. And we have live events twice a year, and we've done some off specialty events. We toured the biggest painting company in Australia. We toured the biggest company in Germany for a couple weeks over the course of a couple years. So it's been quite the ride, and I'm really enjoying it. And selfishly, I get a ton from it because I'm in a peer group and I get to, glean the advice from people that are much wiser than I am.
So can you talk a little bit about specifics around value? You gave me a story yesterday on what happened, and I thought it was super interesting. Like, what's the difference between, because if you really boil it down, if you take away the product or the service, then all business problems are about the same. Would you agree? Yeah. So then the industry specific stuff, which I found kind of fascinating. You gave kind of top level, but I think you helped someone. Talk to us a little bit about, give a very specific version of that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of came back to, like, I briefly talked about comparing financials, right? So, in one of our early meetings, we were just talking about, in roundabout ways, we were comparing, we were still kind of getting to know each other. So we were comparing financials on a percentage basis. So not numbers, like I do this many millions and this many millions goes to this and whatever. It was more about, on a percentage basis, let's just pull our percent and say, this is our overhead, this is our, our labor, our materials, our subcontract, our marketing, this is what we're spending on those things. And one of the individuals in our group was about 15 points higher on material spend than everybody else. And it was like, that sounds strange. And so we kind of came up with, either someone was stealing the paint out of the back of his warehouse, his guys were way over applying it, or he was paying too much, So we were able to dial down to that granular one line item. But when you figure that, paint as a number in a business, in our business, generally around 15% of your overall revenue, if you can shave 15 or 20% off of that number, it's a big savings, on a 10, 15, $20 million company.
Huge savings.
Yeah. So that was an example where, he went back and dug in and realized that he wasn't getting aggressive pricing from the vendors, pushed back on the vendors, and came back and was he was still getting pricing from when he was a $500,000 company. And now the guy's a $12 million business. He should have gotten better pricing based on the volume that he was buying, but he never really pushed. And then when he saw all of our pricing, it was oh, I can push on this. And so, I mean, he paid for, 20 years of peer group membership in one conversation.
Oh, that's amazing. So that shows you kind of the power of being a peer group, right? It's not family, it's not friends, it's forum. Having that mentality and being able to share, because that sharing can come back around. Obviously, I'm going to guess that you're in non-competitive. You might be in the same space, but you're non-competitive to each other, whether it's geographically or otherwise. That's
correct,
right?
I mean, we have a similar process of vetting, and we try to be regional non-compete. It's gotten harder as we get bigger and bigger and bigger companies. So we have companies that have national footprints. I think we just have to tread a little lightly around those. And I think really at the end of the day, it comes up to the group of, is this somebody that you can share with? We do obviously keep employees of the same company, or, we have peer groups for what Keyman or whatever we call them leadership development peer groups. So, kind of number twos, where we have those peer groups as well. So we keep employees separated. We try to keep them regionally diverse so that, you don't have everybody from the Pacific Northwest. You want to have somebody from the Southwest and the Northwest and the East and the Central. And so we do try to do that. And yes, we certainly do our best. I can't say that we never compete with one another, but we do our best to try to mitigate that as best we can.
So how important, you talked a little bit about, I'm going to jump a little bit. You talked a little bit about marketing before, like conferences, where you get information from and maybe where you do business. How important are where you get that information from to grow as a company, to grow as leadership? How important is that outside, we'll say consulting, the outside information? And where do you go to get more information outside of just the industry information? So,
it's a input output thing, right? I think that you get out what you put in, right? So if you want to, if you want to be in shape and you want to be healthy, then you eat the foods that you want to help you perform and give you the energy to do things. If you don't care about that stuff, you go to McDonald's every day, and garbage in, garbage out. So for me, I think surrounding yourself with the people, you want to put yourself in a room with the people you want to be like, right? So I joke around with my friends, my personal friends, not work friends, and say I've been getting invites to tables I don't belong at. I made a career out of getting invites to tables I don't belong at. So I think you get in this entrepreneurial community, you start meeting people, you're making friends, and then, you sit at tables that maybe you don't necessarily belong at today. And that's the thing that I think was a highlight in my mind, is being invited to a couple tables where I was like, dude, I'm behind by multiple zeros here. I don't belong at this table at all. And then the guy's going, yeah, dude, you're 28 years old. You don't belong here. We're all 50. You know how far ahead you are than what we were when we were 28, and now I'm approaching 50. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's true. And now I'm the guy that people are wanting to have a podcast and have on and talk. And I'm having these conversations and people looking to me. And so I think that like the only way you get there is by putting yourself out there and sitting at those tables. And most of what I'm saying here is not original thought. This is stuff that I've combined from experiences of sitting at those tables over dinner and hearing somebody else say, and I'm like, big boys write big checks. I got that. Check. I'm going to remember that one. You know, like I didn't coin that term. Somebody said that to me and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that with me. So, I mean, how could you, this little puzzle of life, the only way you could do it is to grab little pieces along the way and hope that you wind up with a pretty cool puzzle at the end, you know, pretty cool picture at the end. And so that's the way that I look at it. And that's the way that I encourage our team to look at it. And we invest in our team to go to conferences. We invest in our team to, you know, audiobooks and read books and podcasts. And obviously with the founder involved in this kind of world, it sets the tone for like, that's what it looks like. That's what success looks like. And I want to be part of that. So I think that it's definitely something that you'd never want to miss out on.
No, that's, I was going to ask about, you know, obviously you learn and you've learned, and we talked about like, how do I just get as good as possible, as fast as possible? So passing that concepts down to the team is instrumental, right? Like how do they get better? Well, they need to level up too, just like you have going to conferences.
Well, when you think about the entrepreneur, like, you know, when you're the guy that the buck stops with you, like you guys are in your organization, you know, you like, what happens when I have a problem? Like, I don't know. I just have to figure it out. Like, so like, I want to have that same kind of approach from the people that I surround myself with. Like, I don't know. Like, you're not a baby bird. I'm not feeding you. Like, you have to just go and kind of fly on your own. You gotta spread your wings and go. So the information's all out there. There's nothing new under the sun. And if you're willing to put in a little bit of effort and a little bit of legwork and put the time in, you'll figure it out. And I think that like start sooner than later. And I got obsessed with this stuff very early in my career and just read and attended anything I could get my hands on. Like if somebody said, hey, there's this thing, I think it'll be good, you should come. I'm like, I'm there. And that's a lot easier to do in your 20s than your 40s when you have 4 kids like me. So you might as well get on it early and just get to work.
Yeah, it's a lot less distracting when you don't have kids to be able to focus. It's a lot harder to do that.
Give up the after-work bar stool for an after-work networking event. They still have beer there.
That's right. 2 birds, 1 stone.
Let's talk about technology a little bit. As a commercial painting company, what are you investing in? What does technology look like on your side?
So I think the coolest thing that we're working on right now is our drone technology. So we've purchased some drones, a trailer, a truck, and stuff to go along and support our goal of being kind of a comprehensive maintenance vendor. So these drones are actually heavy lift drones that allow us to power wash, paint to some degree. I would say that paint cleaning is really their bread and butter. They are able to paint. You can find use cases on our website. In fact, on last Friday, we painted a church steeple with a drone. We use it to wash and maintain buildings. And I think that it's a really neat technology that is kind of that will be the future of in some circumstances. I don't think it ever eliminates. It's not right for every use case, but it is right in a lot of use cases, and it can significantly reduce costs of scaffolding. It can significantly increase the safety of the project. So you don't have people hanging over the side of the building to wash windows. You can wash them with a drone and the guy's on the ground flying it. So the worst thing that happens is the drone gets hurt rather than a person getting hurt. So there is some safety. There's some fatigue things, you don't have a guy, with his arm up and down all day with a washer. So, you have some of those chronic or long-term illnesses, carpal tunnel and things that can be avoided. So I think that that's something that we're really excited about, kind of moving the industry forward and looking at that. That's probably the biggest one that we have right now.
Moving the industry forward usually is not the cheapest endeavor. It's certainly, and that's any industry at any point in time. Construction certainly lives in that realm. Why make that decision? And then what is it like? Do I buy a drone? Do I go to Target? I buy a drone and hopefully it works. Like, what's that really look like?
We'll do this and then we'll go back to Will's opportunity cost discussion because I'm still weighing, the verdict is still out. But no, I think, as far as there are some manufacturers, I think there's 4 or 5 manufacturers of the heavy lift drones for different reasons and different specialties, primarily focused around the power washing. The particular drone we have is the only one currently that was equipped with the painting setup. I don't think it's that challenging to equip probably other drones with the painting setup, but we found that painting with the drone is really challenging because of the downdraft from the blades. So those things that carry that weight up there have pretty substantial blades on it. And so when wind encounters paint, what is the paint? Swirls everywhere, gets on everything. So there is some challenges. Yeah. But as far as kind of an investment perspective, I mean, we have 2 drones, a trailer truck, and then the training that goes into it. And we're probably into it for about $250,000. I mean, it's an expensive endeavor. And then there's constant, we're learning as we go. So we're doing demos and we're testing stuff and we're like, okay, we'll be able to do this. And then that's not working how we thought it was going to work. And we priced it like this, we got to do it for that price. And all of a sudden it's going to take 3x as long. So I think that there's a very kind of long, I mean, we've had our first drone arrived in February or March. So, I mean, it's not like we just jumped on this. And I think we're just almost a year in, starting to kind of figure it out, have the pilots, the testing, all that stuff, and really having it dialed where, we brought on a full-time business development person, and we're out there really trying to get after the work. And I think when we look at it, I look at it as just one tool in the tool belt, but it's kind of the new shiny tool. So it also helps with PR. Like, you have the new shiny tool, so people see you. And I think when the companies that we work value innovation, right? They look at companies and they go, we want to be with innovative partners. And when we do things like this, our customers become more loyal because they're like, this is the type of organization we want to be partnered with. And I think that for me has a value that can far exceed the cash investment in that long-term loyalty of clients.
No, that's a good way to put it. What else are you trying to work on technology-wise? Obviously, the drones is the sexiest thing. What other things just, make sure the donuts keep getting made?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're looking at, one of the things that the international flair of the association brought to us is the Australian company Higgins, who I can't say enough good things about. Jared's been a great guy to me and kind of somebody that I look up to. He expanded a family business, and we kind of have some similar characteristics and get along really well. And, he introduced us to this concept that they've been deploying in Australia for the last handful of years around comprehensive maintenance. So they really look at kind of transforming the look. Like, when you think about your house or your bedroom or your office or your warehouse, it's like you kind of think about painting it when it needs to be painted. Oh, it kind of starts to look like shit. Time to paint it. Like, yep. That's kind of it's a reactionary, or like we rebranded and now we were blue instead of red. Let's paint our building because we're not red anymore. That's kind of the kind of reactionary way that people have looked at painting for a number of years. And I think they brought to us like a third of their revenue. And, I think they're a 9-figure company. A third of their revenue every year is done in maintenance contracts. So they come out and they make sure that the buildings are protected. They make sure that they're aesthetically pleasing, and there's an ESV component to it because they stock the paint. So the paints get, rather than leaving half gallons of paint all over the country, they keep it at a warehouse and they reuse that paint in the maintenance piece. They extend the life of the paint job, reducing the overall cost they use less materials over a 20-year window on the building. So there's a lot of things there that are very exciting, and we're working on kind of bringing that over stateside. There's a lot of companies that are dabbling in it, and we're hoping to kind of make that a norm in the industry. And then if I can keep going and combine with that is kind of the idea of we've taken the industry association and built a way to look at the exterior facade of a building and give it a rating. So now we're able to quantify those savings by improving or extending the degradation schedule. So it takes longer for these buildings to atrophy, if you will, or to age over time because you're staying on top of it at a fraction of the price of what a repaint would cost. Utilizing the condition index combined with the drones, and then now the picture's starting to become a little bit clearer to you, hopefully, of kind of where the direction in the future of what we're trying to bring to the industry is.
No, that's cool. That's super forefront of, obviously we always love the use of technology, but we love any time that there's innovation we see in the space. It's just always needed and always welcome.
I would argue that there's even pricing innovation happening and changing. I think the construction industry got jealous about with the SaaS industry and getting recurring revenues. So maintenance is the way to go about doing that and still providing value, which coincidentally increases EV.
It certainly can't hurt the valuation of the business to have recurring revenue, let's say. It may have some influence in driving. Yeah, because the technology industry really, the SaaS industry really got us. I mean, you used to be able to buy Microsoft and use it for 10 years, and now I got to pay for it every month for life. For life.
That's right. That's right. So you got to change. Businesses got to change to accommodate for that.
It's like death, $40 a subscriber at a time.
Yep.
Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Yep. So as much as we'd love to talk for hours on end, we always like to ask one last question to all of our guests. So, Aaron, if you were to go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself? What would you tell yourself?
I always think about that question, and like the easy answer is like, I probably should have started my retirement savings at 20. That's kind of an easy bullshit answer. I think that really what it has to, I wish that 20 years ago you could see the fruits of your labor and like what you were doing, and you'd be more encouraged to do it. I think like we're especially at this point in life, we very want the reward immediately. We're immediate gratification culture with phones and that sort of stuff. And I think I kind of knew where I was going, and now that I'm really kind of hitting my stride in my mid 40s, but I think about like I'm 20 something years into this journey of personal development. Like this wasn't, you get kids that come in and they're like, well, I want to do your job. I'm like, well, forget about the next decade of your life, because that's what it's going to take to do it. Jump on it early and do it in my 20s, and I was persistent with it, but I still think I could have done better, right? I could have, taken a couple nights and gone to bed a little bit earlier, or skipped a couple parties that you went to in your 20s that really didn't benefit you. But at the same time, that's part of life, and navigating the social hierarchy is an important piece of entrepreneurship and being a like person and being able to have that network of people. So I don't necessarily say I'd take that back, but I think if I could see what the future would hold and see that like the persistence and the consistency pays off, and those times where you're kind of like, everything's not going right and it's not paying off. And now it's kind of like, it's easy in hindsight to be like, oh yeah, I did all that stuff that got me here. But at the time you're kind of like up and down with it. So that's what I would say.
I appreciate the insight. Good outlook, looking backwards. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Yes. So we will throw all the social links in the show notes and all that fun stuff. But if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I think LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to find me. I'm Aaron Moore, AARONMOORE. So I'm pretty available on LinkedIn. And obviously my email is always open, aaron@ppdpainting.com. So you can always contact me there. And I'm happy. I'm pretty on email a lot. So that's an easy way to get a hold of me, and happy to help and provide any insight. I feel like I've gotten a lot out of this world, so I should probably, giving it back and giving my 2 cents. I can't say that I'm always right. That's for sure. I screw up more than I get right, but I'm pretty persistent. So that's what I would say is just keep grinding, and you get it wrong, just do it again.
No, for sure. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our listeners before we say our goodbyes?
No, I just really appreciate you guys having me on, and I think this is a really cool podcast, and I think what you guys are doing is great, and I like that we didn't know each other prior to. I think one of the gals in my office set this up, and then we got on the phone yesterday, and it was like, oh wait, we know the same people. Oh yeah, this entrepreneurial community is pretty small.
Yep, we know some of the same people. How did we not bump into each other? Yep.
Connect the dots in about 5 minutes. So if this is I think if you're a listener and you're listening to this and you're like, this is who I am, and you hear these conversations, it's like, just keep going for it and put yourself out there and get involved in the communities and invest in yourself, and it'll all come together eventually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So, thank you everybody for listening. Me and Will had a blast. It looks like Aaron had a good time sharing his journey with us, and until next time. Adios.
Adios.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time.
Keep building scale.
Scale.